Hi, welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Laura.
We are back for part 2 of Crystal Rogers' case. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, go listen to that first and then come join us for part 2. Set everything up in part 1 and basically left you with all the questions without getting to 2025. I'm not even going to say without giving you all the answers because still can't give you all the answers, but
oh no, I want
sorry.
all the answers.
I know. I do too. So yeah, should we jump right in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Everything changed in August 2020. So again, now we're 5 years out. And they've been saying this for so long and just not able to find the evidence.
Yeah.
In a dramatic development, the FBI announced that it was taking over as the lead investigative agency on Crystal Rogers' case. This was a significant shift, essentially a recognition that federal resources were needed for a case that had grown cold at the local level. Almost immediately, the FBI, along with state police and sheriff's deputies, executed a series of 9 search warrants in Bardstown related to Crystal's disappearance. They had over 150 federal and state law enforcement officers that descended on the small town to carry out these searches. It was, in effect, a large-scale raid targeting multiple properties connected to the Houck family and associates of theirs. Among the locations searched were the Houck family farm, which was where Crystal was last seen. That's where they were living. Properties owned by Brooks's construction company, and the home of Nick Houck. FBI agents were spotted carrying out boxes of evidence. And at one site, they even brought in excavating equipment to dig for possible human remains or buried evidence. The results of those digs were not disclosed, though. Just weeks before this FBI surge in July 2020, an unrelated discovery briefly raised hopes. There were human remains found near the border of Nelson and Washington counties. So Bardstown is in Nelson, but it's pretty close to the Washington County line. The rumor mill churned with the thought that maybe Crystal had finally been found. However, after forensic testing, the FBI announced that the remains did not belong to Crystal Rogers.
Oh, that's got to be hard for the family because I'm sure that they were very hopeful that they had found something.
Now, the remains that were found were eventually tied to a man named Jonathan Essex, who was from Nelson County, which is the same county that Bardstown is located in. His exact cause of death has not been publicly released, but the case has been classified as a murder, and the FBI has been involved with the investigation. But as of today, no one has been charged with connection to his death either. And he was reported missing in June of 2020, so just a month before he was found.
Wow.
Having found the remains and then finding out that they didn't belong to Crystal was a disappointment for the family, but the renewed FBI effort in the case kept their hope alive. In the summer of 2021, the FBI conducted another major search in a subdivision called Woodlawn Springson, Bardstown. This was an area where Brooks Houck's construction company had built several new homes in the months after Crystal disappeared. Investigators suspected that perhaps evidence or maybe even Crystal's body might have been hidden during that construction. So they used ground-penetrating technology and dug up concrete at some of those houses. On August 27th, 2021, the FBI revealed that, quote, an item of interest had been recovered from the concrete at one of the properties. They did not disclose what the item was. It could have been some small physical object or trace, something potentially linked to Crystal. The fact that it was encased in concrete shows how far whoever did this went to hide evidence.
Yeah. Can you imagine living in that area?
No. And it's like, well, your houses were built by this person who is suspected of murdering his girlfriend. Maybe under any of your houses, we don't know. Like, that would
Yeah.
be awful.
And we need to move.
Yeah. What do you do? How do they dig up concrete foundation?
Yeah.
How do you do that without destroying the home?
I don't know enough about, I guess that you can dig up concrete though and patch it. I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't
I
know.
guess,
I've never built a house. I
yeah,
can't
me
answer that.
either. I guess if the ground penetrating radar picked up on something, you're searching a specific area.
Yeah.
But need to learn more about that.
Because I know that they do like foundation repairs when your concrete, like your foundation's broken
Mm,
and they don't replace the whole foundation. They can repair parts. So if they
right.
just dug down through one part, they could probably just fix that part, I would guess.
Yeah, that's probably it. Along with the announcement that they had found something, the FBI made a pointed statement. They begged people in Bardstown who had information to come forward. They said it was time for the community's silence to end. The message hinted that the FBI believed there were still individuals out there who knew exactly what had happened, but had not yet spoken up out of fear or loyalty. By this point, we're 6 years in. The outline of a possible conspiracy was coming into focus for investigators. They had Brooks as the prime suspect and plenty of circumstantial evidence against him. They had reason to suspect that Brooks's brother, Nick, and perhaps other family members, like his mom, Rosemary, were involved in helping cover up the crime. But one lingering question remained. Did Brooks act alone in carrying out the murder and disposal of Crystal? The involvement of additional vehicles, like his grandma's Buick that was seen at their house that night, and the complexity of moving a body and placing the car off of that interstate, and perhaps the sheer audacity of murdering someone in a small town suggested that he might have had help. Rumors had long swirled that one or two other men might have been enlisted by Brooks on that night. There were
The
unconfirmed.
guy that perjured himself.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you know? Because he
Yeah.
went to jail, but he didn't say what he knew.
Yeah.
There were unconfirmed whispers, but in 2022 and 2023, it appears that the authorities finally gathered enough evidence to act. In August of 23, Bardstown buzzed with rumors that a grand jury was hearing evidence about Crystal's case. So we're 8 years past now. Then on September 7th, 2023, a bombshell went public. A Nelson County grand jury indicted a 32-year-old local man named Joseph L. Lawson on charges related to Crystal Rogers' disappearance. Specifically, Lawson was charged with conspiracy to commit murder and complicity in tampering with physical evidence. The indictment pointedly did not name Crystal Rogers or any victim in its text, but the dates and the details corresponded exactly to Crystal's case. And Crystal's family confirmed that they were notified about the impending charges. This was a huge development because Joseph Lawson's name had never been publicly linked to the case before. To the community, it begged the question, who is Joseph Lawson and what role did he play? It soon emerged that Joseph, who went by Joey, was an acquaintance who had done construction work for Brooks. He wasn't a family member, but he moved in the same circles. His indictment suggested the prosecutors believed he helped in planning Crystal's murder or covering it up, or both. By charging a co-conspirator, authorities were signaling that the case involved multiple people colluding together to harm Crystal. The other shoe dropped just a few weeks later. On September 27th, 2023, after 8 years of Crystal being missing, Brooks was arrested and charged with her murder. Police took Brooks into custody in a surprise raid, and reporting varies. It was either at his home or at his workplace. They charged him with murder and tampering with physical evidence in connection to Crystal's presumed death. A judge set an astonishing $10 million bond for Brooks, underscoring the severity of the case and how much they felt that he would be a flight risk and probably have help in fleeing.
Yeah.
The news
When they already suspect help from his family.
Exactly.
I could see them being worried that he would post bail and disappear.
Yep, and never be found again. The news of Brooks's arrest spread quickly. Many residents felt relief. Former Bardstown Mayor Dixie Hibbs commented that people weren't exactly cheering in the streets, but there was the collective sigh of relief that there's an answer to everyone's thought. Where is Crystal Rogers? Because remember, we still have not found her remains. The general feeling was that at least someone was finally being held accountable. With Brooks in jail awaiting trial, details from the investigation started to trickle out through court hearings. At Brooks's arraignment in early October 2023, Nelson County's lead prosecutor, Commonwealth's attorney Shane Young, revealed a startling piece of evidence. Investigators had recovered a rifle that they suspect was the murder weapon used to kill Crystal's father, Tommy Ballard. Even more startling, this gun had allegedly been sold by Nick Houck, so Brooks's brother, under a made-up name, not long after Tommy's 2016 shooting. In other words, prosecutors hinted that they had evidence tying Brooks's family to both Crystal's murder and Tommy's murder. If true, it validated what the Ballards had always believed, that Tommy was killed as part of the cover-up. And it is worth noting that as of this recording, the investigation into Tommy's death is still ongoing, and no charges have been filed for that crime. But the revelation about the rifle was a huge clue linking the two cases. Then, in December 2023, another arrest was made. Stephen L. Buddy Lawson, the father of Joseph Lawson, was indicted and taken into custody. Steve, who was 53 at the time, was charged with conspiracy to commit murder in Crystal's case. This meant that 3 people total, Brooks Houck, Joseph Lawson, and now Steve Lawson, were all facing felony charges related to Crystal's disappearance. The circle of alleged conspirators had widened to include this father-son duo, the Lawsons, who, again, were not originally in anybody's mind connected to this case. The pieces were falling into place for prosecutors. They believed that Brooks was the mastermind and the principal offender, and that Joseph and his father Stephen had assisted in the plot to murder Crystal and hide the evidence. The grand jury indictments and the arrest affidavits were sealed. It was clear the authorities had uncovered significant new information in the recent years prior, likely through a combination of forensic analysis, re-interviewing witnesses, and possibly, maybe, a break in the code of silence among those involved. As 2024 began, Bardstown braced for what was sure to be a dramatic trial. In the interim, a few tantalizing hints emerged from pre-trial court filings. Prosecutors indicated that Brooks Houck's own mother, who was 70-year-old Rosemary Houck, and his brother Nick were considered unindicted co-conspirators in Crystal's murder. This meant that law enforcement believed Rosemary and Nick played significant roles in the crime and or its cover-up, even though they were not formally charged at the time.
It sounds like a movie. Like,
yes,
all these people, and it just sounds like some...
like a crime thriller or some...
I can only think novella, but like what was like Days of Our Lives?
Oh, a soap opera.
A soap opera.
Yeah.
Like a true crime soap opera.
Right?
All these people conspiring together for some...
Yeah. So 2 things. 1, if it were a soap opera, you would say it was way too wild to mirror any real life situation. And yet
Yes.
here we are. And two, why are so many people conspiring to get rid of Crystal?
Yeah. What did she do? Why this whole conspiracy to get rid of her? It's bizarre.
It is bizarre. And there are still some unanswered questions here because that's a lot of people. Because you've already had one go to prison. 3 are now currently charged. So that's 4. And then his mom, his grandma, and his brother.
Yeah. What is going on here? It's like a mafia family working together to take out somebody.
Oh my gosh. And they're in real estate, which is often.
Maybe that's what it is. There's some
Maybe.
mafia real estate family. That's just bizarre. And to not even know why.
And it's
why are they trying to get rid of her?
Right. You don't even have to get divorced. Like, it's clearly not about that. It's clearly something beyond. And that's why people bring up the first 3 murders where Crystal was with Brooks when those happened. Did she find out something about those 3? Were those 3 connected to each other?
People together?
Right.
Maybe someone else in the other family had committed those and she found out about it and now I don't know.
Yeah. To me, that's something that makes more sense than anything else, is that if his family or him were involved in those first 3 and she found out, that this was the conspiracy to cover those up.
Yeah.
But I need more.
There's not like a connecting factor from these people to those murders at this time.
Not that has been released.
Oh,
seems so crazy.
It just doesn't even seem real. Like, it's so out there. Such a wild case.
It is. It is an intense one. Absolutely. In going off of court documents for what we do actually know, because there's that other stuff, makes your brain just cycle trying to put the pieces together.
Yeah.
Prosecutors accused Rosemary, so that's Brooks's mother, of actually initiating the plot. Allegedly, weeks before Crystal disappeared, Rosemary asked a family friend, Danny, our friend who went to prison for perjury, if he knew anyone who could, quote, get rid of Crystal for her. Danny supposedly responded that there were people who would do it for the right price. How do you know these people?
Where's this coming from?
And also, just side note, someone asks you that, go turn them into police. Don't give them names. What?
Don't be complicit in this.
Mm-mm. If it's true, that is quite the picture of premeditation. The Houck family, it seemed, viewed Crystal as a problem to be eliminated. Why? The why of it all, we don't have a good answer. One witness would later testify to a horrifying statement by Rosemary. The witness said she took pleasure in Crystal's disappearance and said that Crystal, quote, should have disappeared long before she did. And now that she's gone, the child will be raised right. This is such a cold-blooded statement for a mother that has disappeared.
Yeah.
And to say that she wasn't good enough to raise your grandson, so she should be eliminated. That is just
psychotic.
So psychotic. So cold-blooded.
And
evil.
Entitled and evil.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As for Nick, so the brother that was a cop, prosecutors noted that he had never given a full or consistent account of his whereabouts on the night of July 3rd. Nick's then girlfriend told a grand jury that she couldn't reach Nick for nearly 24 hours on the day Crystal was last seen, which is quite a gap for a police officer who ordinarily kept in contact. Investigators believe Nick was directly involved that night, even assisting Brooks. They also cited how Nick had infamously called Brooks during his police interview and later urged family members to secretly record their grand jury testimony. This, to them, was evidence that Nick was an active part of the conspiracy to cover up Crystal's murder. And it sounds like to me also participate, possibly. Despite all of this, neither Nick nor Rosemary were charged, possibly because prosecutors wanted to focus on the strongest case against those they believed directly carried out the crime, which was Brooks and the son and father duo, the Lawsons. It's also possible that Nick and Rosemary's actions, while suspicious, didn't have enough direct evidence to secure a conviction, at least not yet. The first trial stemming from these charges came in spring 2025. Steve, the oldest defendant, was tried separately, likely because his son and Brooks were being tried together, and trying 3 people is really, really tough. In May 2025, a Nelson County jury found Steve Lawson guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with physical evidence. He was sentenced to 17 years in prison for his role. The conviction was significant. It legally established that there had indeed been a conspiracy surrounding Crystal's disappearance. It also meant that a jury found that there was credible evidence that Steve helped plan or cover up the murder. Some details from Steve's trial leaked out, including a key piece of testimony. Steve Lawson had told a grand jury that he helped his son, Joseph, move Crystal Rogers' car after she went missing. So in his own words, Steve admitted that Brooks had asked him through Joseph to help with something using a code word indicating he wanted Crystal, quote, gone, and her car moved. When a juror pressed Steve on why he would get involved, he revealed that Brooks had essentially bribed him. He said that Brooks had promised him all this work that he would get if he helped out with this small thing, Brooks had promised to steer a lot of construction work or contracts to Steve, who also worked in construction, in exchange for his help covering up the crime. This testimony was a bombshell. It put Brooks at the center of ordering the cover-up and showed that greed played a part in these other people assisting him. The mention of moving Crystal's car lined up with what investigators had always suspected, that the abandoned car on the parkway was staged, deliberately left there to mislead police. Steve Lawson's conviction was one step toward justice, but the 2 main defendants, Brooks, Houck, and Joseph Lawson, were still awaiting their day in court. That came in June and July of 2025, 10 years after Crystal had vanished. The trial of Brooks and Joey, as he goes by, for Crystal's murder and related charges began, and it really did grip the whole state of Kentucky. Because of intense media interest, the trial was moved to a different county for jury selection, in part to make sure that they had impartial jurors. But ultimately, the case was actually held in Nelson County, where all of this happened. Prosecutors faced a challenge. Crystal's body had never been found, and a lot of the evidence they had was circumstantial. There were no crime scene photographs, no DNA of Crystal's discovered on, say, a murder weapon or something. They don't even know what the murder weapon was. At least none of this was ever revealed publicly. And there were no eyewitnesses to the murder. The prosecution's case rested on proving a web of motive, opportunity, and conspiracy that all pointed to Brooks as the mastermind and Joseph as his willing helper. Over several weeks of testimony, the Commonwealth's attorneys laid out a narrative that likely sounded very similar to Crystal's family, who had long suspected the same outline. They argued that on the night of July 3rd, 2015, Brooks killed Crystal or arranged for her to be killed. I find it interesting that they say both. Because
Yeah.
if he didn't do it, who did?
Yeah.
And this happened at the Houck family farm, where Brooks often kept equipment and where he and Crystal were last seen. Now, the exact method of murder was not publicly detailed, but prosecutors suggested that it happened sometime after midnight, so technically on July 4th, but from the night of the 3rd. Motive was a key part of this case. The jury heard that Brooks had been unfaithful, having an affair about a month before Crystal disappeared, and he wanted out of the relationship. Maddening. Maddening.
That is not a reason to kill somebody.
No. Crystal was a mother of 5, and splitting up with her could mean a messy custody battle over their toddler son, possibly having to pay child support, which Brooks, who was a successful but people call him frugal businessman, did not want to. The Commonwealth argued that rather than lose custody or money, Brooks decided to permanently remove Crystal from his life. It was a cold-hearted calculation. I just can't ever wrap my brain around why that's what you go with instead of breaking up.
Yeah. It's insane that people go to that instead of just ending the relationship, figuring out the custody or things like that. But
Yep,
just to get rid of them, that
horrible.
is
And she has 4 other
terrible.
kids too.
Yeah.
Oh. Now, the cover up, according to prosecutors, was a whole family affair. They presented evidence and witnesses to show that Brooks's mother, Rosemary, and his brother, Nick, immediately rallied to protect him and hide the crime. Phone records, or rather the suspicious lack thereof, showed that Rosemary's primary cell phone went completely dark. And this is bonkers. From June 16th through August 4th. She didn't use it at all in that almost 2-month period.
Wow.
Investigators believe that Rosemary switched to an alternate burner phone during this time, presumably to be able to communicate in secret as this plot to kill Crystal was carried out. And then in the aftermath, yeah.
That is so wild.
I've not heard of a phone being off for that long in almost any case. And how is that not just as suspicious? Yes, they can't see the calls and texts that you're making, but your phone's
So
just
suspicious.
completely dark for almost 2 months.
And especially with the comments that she made about wanting to get rid of Crystal and the other guy saying he had people to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So suspicious.
This matches right up with the timeline. Suspiciously matches up. Crystal vanished July 3rd, right in the middle of Rosemary's mysterious period of phone silence. And like we talked about, that friend that witnessed Danny Singleton, like you just mentioned, he had been jailed for perjury. In this case, he testified that Rosemary had approached him weeks before Crystal's disappearance. And we talked about that, asking if he knew someone who could get rid of Crystal. Singleton admitted that he suggested there were people who would do such a thing for money, which is a conversation he failed to share with police back in 2015, hence the perjury charges. Another witness recounted the antidote painting Rosemary's disturbing attitude, saying that she overheard Rosemary saying that Crystal should have disappeared long before she did, and then talking about Crystal's son. The prosecution was pointing out that Rosemary disapproved of how Crystal was raising her grandson and felt the family was better off with Crystal out of the picture. This evidence, I know, right?
Screams monster-in-law.
Monster-in-law, yeah.
And they weren't even married.
Right. All the evidence that they brought up showed Rosemary not just as this passive bystander, but potentially the instigator who hated Crystal enough to set all of this in motion. And then there was Nick Houck, the ex-cop brother. We talked about his interfering in the early investigation, the phone call. This was all recounted for the jury. Prosecutors also highlighted how Nick couldn't or wouldn't account for his own whereabouts during those critical hours when Crystal vanished. They had Nick's ex-girlfriend testify again about how she couldn't reach him for that 24-hour span. Additionally, evidence was introduced about how Nick attempted to derail the investigation, which was when he had asked his family members to secretly record their grand jury testimony to later give the rest of the family a heads up on what was asked so they could plan their answers after that. All of this bolstered the prosecution's claim that Nick was somehow in on it from the start. And though Nick was not on trial, the state wanted the jury to see that the disappearance wasn't a simple one-man crime of passion. It was a conspiracy involving planning and a cleanup crew, so to speak. Now, at the center of it all, prosecutors placed Brooks as the ringleader who gave the orders. They argued that he lured Crystal to the farm or took advantage of her being there already. Not exactly sure on that detail. And then killed her and enlisted the help of all of these other people to hide her body and stage her car, which is where Joseph Lawson came in, according to the state. Lawson was in his early 20s at the time of the crime and was allegedly one of the people that Brooks tapped to help dispose of Crystal's remains. And then he had Joseph and his dad move the car to the parkway as a decoy. The jury heard that Joseph's father, Steve, who'd already been convicted, confessed to helping move the car and implied that his son and Brooks were directly involved in that act. It appears that Joseph's role as a fixer and a helper, not the mastermind, but a critical participant who knew of the plot and assisted in carrying it out, and then also hiding it for the next 9-10 years. Crucially, even though Crystal's body has never been found, prosecutors convinced the jury that enough circumstantial evidence existed to conclude that she was murdered and that Brooks was guilty of that murder. And this is such a heartbreaking aspect of it. They emphasized that Crystal would have never willingly left her children. She has 5 children who were the center of her world. She wouldn't have just left them to voluntarily disappear and never had contact again. Also, taking the children, which to me is the biggest part of that. If she was willingly disappearing, why leave your purse and your phone?
Yeah.
You're going to take those things.
Makes it seem like this family gets rid of people they don't like.
It sure does. They got away with it for such a long time.
Well, and then you wonder if they do have other connections with any of the other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a small town.
Yeah.
And they are big family.
And it kind of feels like they were confident in this one.
Yeah.
And how to go about it from the very beginning.
And, you know, the one with the 2 women, the mom and daughter that were murdered in their house, it seemed like it was someone that they knew in that small of a town. You probably know almost everybody, if not everybody. Maybe they did something they didn't like either.
I am curious if there's a connection there. I feel like there has to be.
And like the police officer, because the brother was a police officer too.
Mm-hmm.
And they took out her dad because they didn't like what he was doing.
Right.
It's wild. There are no words.
No. Taking out her father is, I mean, that's where you feel really bold and brazen because people they already suspect that you're involved in her disappearance. You do this, and of course they're going to think it's you, but you know you're not going to get in trouble for it. And literally, still, that one hasn't had a conviction.
Yeah.
And now we just hit 9 years since that happened. Mm-hmm. They also brought up the fact that a decade of no contact, no sightings, nothing to show that Crystal is still alive indicates to them that she is not anymore. They outlined how all the signs pointed back to Brooks and really no one else.
Yeah.
There isn't other people that they even were considering, really. I mean, I know they went down those avenues, but it's Brooks, right?
Yeah.
And some of those signs were his failure to report her missing, the family's suspicion. He didn't go to a single search for her. He clearly was not concerned or
Care.
yep. Also, the perjury of his friend, the involvement of his family members, the secretive actions of the Lawson duo, who did point out that that was only at his request. It was a puzzle, but when the pieces were assembled, a clear picture emerged. In early July 2025, the long awaited verdict arrived. Brooks Houck was found guilty on all counts related to Crystal Rogers' death.
Good.
10 years. Specifically, the jury convicted Brooks of murder with the possibility that even if he didn't personally pull the trigger or inflict the fatal harm, he was guilty as either principal or accomplice. Kentucky law allowed the jury to convict him as a conspirator to murder and of tampering with physical evidence for the staged abandonment of Crystal's car and other concealment acts. Alongside him, Joseph was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and of tampering with physical evidence as well. Given that Joseph was not charged with murder itself, the jury's verdict indicated that they believed he had helped plan and or cover up the crime, but they didn't believe that he personally killed Crystal. Both men showed little visible emotion as the judge read the verdicts, according to everyone in the courtroom. For the Ballard family who were in the courtroom, it was a moment of relief, catharsis. After 10 years, the man they had always believed killed Crystal was officially pronounced guilty by a jury of his peers. When sentencing came in September 2025, Judge Sims III followed the jury's recommendations closely. Brooks was sentenced to life in prison, which is the maximum for murder in Kentucky. Kentucky does allow the possibility of parole after 20 years on a life sentence. The judge noted that Brooks would be eligible after serving 85% of his term. Joseph was sentenced to 25 years in prison for his lesser but still grave role. Again, the maximum the jury had suggested. And as we mentioned, Steve was already in prison for 17 years. All three convicted conspirators declared their intentions to appeal their convictions, but as of this time, they remain incarcerated and their appeals are pending in higher courts. During the sentencing hearing, Crystal's family addressed the court and the convicted men with emotional impact statements. Perhaps the most powerful voice was that of Sherry, Crystal's mother. She directly faced Brooks, who is the father of one of her grandchildren and now is responsible for killing her daughter, and spoke of the immeasurable pain he has caused. In part of it, she begged him to tell her where her daughter is.
Yeah.
She said, "That's your forgiveness."
Yeah.
Brooks, however, remained impassive and gave absolutely no response, maintaining the cold silence that he has for years.
Terrible.
Sherry vowed, "I know."
Well, to have him convicted and still not know where she is.
Yeah. Why don't they have to tell us?
I know. I would say that too.
Yeah.
Mandatory.
Mm-hmm. Especially when it's a missing person. Because, but if you're
still claiming you
planning to appeal,
Yeah.
exactly, then you're not going to. Sherry vowed that she would be at every single one of Brooks's parole hearings in the future, quote, with an army, to ensure he never walks free before serving his full life sentence. Other family members spoke. Crystal's oldest daughter gave a heart-wrenching statement. She called Brooks a coward and told Joseph, who has been in a wheelchair due to an accident in 2015, that he deserved to be wheeled out with the trash for what he'd done. I like that.
Yes. Very cunning there.
I know. The anger and grief in that courtroom was palpable, mixed with this sense of vindication that at last the system had caught up with the people responsible. One curious outcome of the case involved Crystal's youngest son, who was the child she shared with Brooks. In the wake of his conviction, you might expect that her family would gain custody. However, in a cruel twist, a family court granted permanent custody of him to Brooks's sister, a woman named Rhonda. I think this decision stemmed from the fact that this son had been living with the Houck side of the family for the past decade and was settled there. That's who he knew. It does. It's just got to be so hard.
Yeah.
Sherry has said publicly that she holds out hope that she could still be part of his life as she is with her other grandchildren's lives, and that as they grow older, they'll understand the truth of what happened to Crystal. With the trial over, the case of Crystal Rogers has reached a milestone that for years seemed elusive: accountability. It took a full decade, but the central figure behind Crystal's disappearance is now behind bars, likely for the rest of his life. Crystal's family had fought relentlessly against doubt, against the fear that their daughter's case would join Bardstown's roster of forever unsolved mysteries. And I'm sure there was fear along the way after what happened to her father that it could happen to someone else in their family as well.
Yeah.
We have a lot of unanswered questions. The most heartbreaking of these is the whereabouts of Crystal's remains. Despite the convictions, still no trace of Crystal has ever been found, so her family has not been able to properly lay her to rest. At every opportunity, Sherry continues to plead for anyone with knowledge to step up and tell her where her daughter is. There is hope that maybe one of the convicted men might eventually reveal the location, maybe as an appeal for leniency, maybe out of a newfound conscience that is still lacking.
So I was wondering if they offered that as a reducing of their sentence or something, if someone might say where, especially maybe not Brooks, but one of the others who helped, if they know.
Right. Stephen or Joseph.
Yeah.
Or even Nick, who has not been convicted of anything, but his fingerprints show up all over it. As of now, though, Brooks is maintaining his silence and still insists that he's innocent. And then, like you just mentioned, those two have not publicly disclosed any additional information either because they're in the middle of appealing their convictions. Another unfinished bit of this case is the murder of Crystal's father. With her case formally closed in court, now the Ballard family has turned their full attention to finding out who killed Tommy.
Yeah.
They have long suspected that Brooks and his family were involved in Tommy's death as well. And remember, we found the gun in one of his properties hidden, or Nick's gun. You would feel like that would be some evidence to get more warrants, or
you would think
talk
so.
to more. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I would definitely think so.
And it is possible that additional witnesses or co-conspirators might come forward either by choice or by investigators finding new evidence. Maybe forensic evidence could lead to an indictment. The family has made it clear that they won't feel true peace until both Crystal and Tommy have justice. And remember, other 3 murders that happened in 2013 and then Kathy and Samantha in 2014 both remain open and unsolved to this day. Investigators say that they have not found credible links between those crimes and the Houck family or Crystal's case, despite years of speculation in the town. So it could be just something happened and it happened in close succession, but not related. I'm not sure. There are a lot of theories out there that point to everything being connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. like we said, those theories are unproven. We're not saying that they're real or
Yeah.
that anybody specific is responsible for the other three. And law enforcement has publicly cautioned against assuming all the crimes are connected because they just don't have the evidence to prove it. But it is interesting.
It is very interesting.
Because we also had that other one whose remains were found.
Yeah.
Who disappeared from the same city.
I think I might move. I lived there.
Yeah.
That's too many coincidental
be very
murders
appealing.
altogether if they're not connected.
Right. I do still feel like there's got to be more reason also. It seems insane to me. And I know people, like, they don't think the same way that we do. You can't say like one thing or the other. His mom just saying that the grandson needs to be raised somewhere else or needs to be raised not with Crystal. I don't understand. I don't understand taking a mom from 5 children.
And what makes her think that she gets to decide that for her son and his girlfriend's child in such a drastic way to say you're going to take her out because you don't like some of the things she's doing?
Right.
That's so, I don't even know the word.
I don't either.
There has to be more or something else that happened. It doesn't seem, I don't know. A lack of words is what I have.
Lack of words.
There are no words to explain that thought process. No, how would you go from, I don't like how she's raising this 2-year-old to I need to kill her?
Right.
Like what in the world?
And him having to pay child support. Really?
Yeah.
I do feel like there's more to it, but it's not out there.
The only other thing I speculated that I thought might be something is if, you said that maybe Brooks had been unfaithful. Maybe it went both ways. And so they were upset about that. Or if she was going to leave and take the toddler, try and get full custody, go somewhere else. And they didn't want that. But still,
he could have been telling his mom she was unfaithful. Well, he was the one, because he really was cheating on her. He could have been saying, she's cheating on me, lying about her to his mom.
Yeah.
And that escalated things where
could have been.
Maybe he knows. And again, not saying anything from
this is all just our speculation.
Sources. Exactly. Maybe he knows what she's capable of. And
the mom.
If he just wants to not be in a relationship with her anymore with Crystal, telling his mom Rosemary X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Get the ball rolling.
Just wild behavior. I can't imagine thinking that way. Like you said, not everyone thinks the same, but how was that your response to that situation? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I guess we'll take her out then. Like,
right.
What?
Oh, instead of working to make sure, and this is super crappy, but to make sure that you have custody or to make sure that you don't have to pay that much in child support. Work on those things.
Yeah.
Take your crime.
Well, and also her family lives there. It's not likely that she's going to take the kid and move to another state or something like that either.
No. All 4 of her kids are entrenched in the community, and part of it, that's their home. She's a lifelong resident of Bardstown.
Yeah.
She's not going somewhere else.
Yeah. It's not, I don't know. There has to be more. Don't you think there has to be more to it? There has to be something that we don't know.
And I also think if it was a bigger town, if it was a population of 5 million, those other murders aren't going to have the same, you would have more crime going on in a city that big, where this one's so small and such rapid succession and unsolved.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. Because we have 6, if we count the remains that were found.
Yeah.
And only one of them has been closed. And look how many people. 4 people have done prison time for this case, and 2 others probably should have.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And it's not even like they were convicted, but it's not like they ever found her.
Right. So they have some tricks up their sleeve, I guess.
Yeah, it's baffling. And
It is.
like I said before, some kind of wild soap opera. Totally. It feels like a made up story with how crazy all the details are for this one.
Yeah, this one it's intense. It's in depth.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is the story of Crystal Rogers, her life, her disappearance, that long road to justice that deeply affected the community of Bardstown. That one is a lot.
It is a lot.
It's very tragic and heartbreaking too. And there's still so many unanswered questions, even though technically we have one answer.
Yeah, lots of questions.
Because I still feel like in her case, there's so many questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why and
I do hope that they find her. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Crime Clueless. We are grateful for you. If you are looking for the resources or to learn more about this case, you can head over to our blog, which is on our website, crimeclueless.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would be so grateful if you would take a moment to rate or review or share our podcast. It's fast, easy, and free. You can rate us on Apple or Spotify or Audible, and it only takes a second, but it really does help, and it means the world to us. Your support helps us reach more listeners and grow our community. If you're on social media, we'd love to connect with you. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Just search for @CrimeClueless. And as always, remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murderers.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.